Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Ram Hare Hare, Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Hare
Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhurja patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavabhyo namo namah. Anant Vishnu ki jai. Namacharya Haridas Thakur ji ki jai. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Good morning, dear devotees. This is Shivani from National Virginia. Please forgive me for stopping your beautiful chanting. Let us move to our next part of the session, which is Sri Caitanya Bhagavata Adi khanda, chapter 16, verses 15 to 32. May I know all enjoying this morning?
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Shri Guru Gauranga and all the assembled devotees. Yashamati from Chicago.
Hare Krishna, Yashamati Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Guru and Gauranga ki jai. Thank you so much for joining, giving a wonderful and beautiful association, Mataji. Hare Krishna, Hare Bol.
Hare Krishna, Hare Bol.
Hare Krishna, Shrimani Mataji. Please accept my humble obeisances to Srila Prabhupada, Priti Vilasini Devi Atlanta.
Hare Krishna, Priti Vilasini Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Guru and Gauranga ki jai. Thank you, Mataji, for joining, giving a wonderful and beautiful association. Hare Krishna, Hare Bol.
Hare Krishna, Shivani Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. This is Vidita Gandharvika Devi Dasi from Texas.
Hare Krishna, Vanita Gandharvika Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Guru and Gauranga ki jai. Thank you for joining, giving a wonderful and beautiful association. Hare Krishna, Hare Bol.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, Guru Maharajas and all the assembled Vaishnavas. This is Kirti Vasanari.
Hare Krishna, Priti Sundari Mataji, please accept my humble obeisances. Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Guru and Gauranga ki jai. Thank you so much for joining and giving a wonderful and beautiful association, Mataji. Hare Krishna, Hare Bol.
Hare Krishna Mataji, please accept my humble obeisance. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, Sri Guru and Gauranga, all assembled devotees. Shashidhar joining from Texas. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, please accept my humble obeisances. Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Guru and Gauranga ki jai. Thank you so much for joining, Prabhuji, and giving a wonderful and beautiful association. Hare Krishna, Hare Bol.
Hare Krishna, Shivani Mataji. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and all the assembled devotees. This is Indulekha Karna Devi Dasi.
Hare Krishna, Indulekha Karuna Mataji. Please accept my humble obeisances. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Guru and Gauranga ki jai. Thank you so much, Mataji, for joining and giving a wonderful and beautiful association. Hare Krishna, Hare Bol.
Hare Krishna, Mataji, Tanpat Pranam to you and all Vaishnava. Srila Prabhupada, Srila Gurudev ki jai, Vrinda.
Hare Krishna, Vrinda Gopika Mataji. Please accept my humble obeisances. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Guru and Gauranga ki jai. Thank you, Mataji, for joining and giving a wonderful and beautiful association today. Hare Krishna, Hare Bol.
Unfortunately, there is absolutely no space, so I'm not able to do recording.
I can hear you.
Yeah, so Mataji is saying that we cannot do recording, but we can start the class. That's what you're telling, right, Mataji?
Yeah, we can't do recording because there is zero space. So
That's okay, Mataji. We can take a recording later from YouTube. Yeah. Shivani Mataji, you can start.
Thank you, Mataji. Good morning, dear devotees. Once again, I would like to welcome everyone to this mid-morning session at Bhakti Sangha Japa conference call. I would like to start by sharing a quote by Srila Prabhupada ji. I don't say follow me. I say follow Krishna. Krishna says surrender unto me. I say surrender unto Krishna. Is there any difference? My position is simply repeating because Krishna says anyone who preaches this confidential subject matter is dear to me. Allahabad, January 18, 1971. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Today we are very fortunate to have her grace Antaranga Tulasi Mataji. Mataji will be enlightening us on Sri Caitanya Bhagavata, chapter 16, verses 15 to 32. Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances. Antaranga Tulasi Mataji. Thank you so much for giving a wonderful and beautiful association, Mataji. We are very happy to have you on the call today. Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Guru and Gauranga ki jai. Please take over the call, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna to everyone. Hare Krishna Mataji. Thank you for inviting me here. And I am very fortunate to be a part of this wonderful series of lectures on Sri Caitanya Bhagavat, reading of Caitanya Bhagavat. It's such a wonderful effort that you have all taken to read Caitanya Bhagavat, which is a very, very important book for Gaudiya Vaishnavas. It discusses about Gauranga Mahaprabhu's pastimes, especially the Navadvip pastimes, Sri Mayapur Dham, Navadvip Dham, and Gauranga Mahaprabhu's pastime here. So I'm very, very happy to see that so many devotees are regularly reading Caitanya Bhagavat, and I'm so fortunate to be a part of this today. So I thank all of you for giving me this opportunity, and I'd like to start with the Mangalacharan prayers. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadanti Swapadantikam Vande Aham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratvishe Namaha. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swame Nitinamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jai Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. I would like everyone to recite with me with your mics muted, but you can recite in along with me in your own homes. The first verse of the Mangalacharan verse that Vrindavan Das Thakur writes for Caitanya Bhagavat. Ajanulambita bhujau kanaka vadato sankirtanai kapitarau kamalaya dakshau Vishwambharau Dvijavarau Yugadharmapalo Vande Jagat Priyakarau Karunavataro. Such a beautiful verse that Vrindavan Das Thakur in the beginning his Mangalacharan for Caitanya Bhagavat, wonderfully glorifying Gauranga and Nityananda together with their wonderful features that they're known for. Karunavataro, the most merciful incarnations they are. It's a beautiful verse, and we are so thankful and grateful to Vrindavan Das Thakur, by whose mercy we have this wonderful literature as Caitanya Bhagavat. And today we will be reading from chapter 16. I was told from verse 15 to 32 today. So this is such a of the Adi Khanda of Caitanya Bhagavata. Is my voice clear, Mataji? Any disturbances?
Yes, Mataji. Yes, Mataji.
Yes, Mataji.
Okay. So since we are in chapter 16 of Adi Khanda, and Adi Khanda has total 17 chapters. So you're almost ending Adi Khanda. So I thought that before we begin today's class, today's section, we should have a small recap of Adi Khanda, since we're nearing its end and we're going to enter Madhya Khanda in a few more classes. So I thought let's first discuss about the recap of how Adi Khanda began and how we are today in chapter 16, so that the flow is intact. It is a bit easier to remember the flow of Caitanya Bhagavat than Srimad Bhagavatam, because Srimad Bhagavatam is intertwined with so many stories and so many questions and philosophical aspects, whereas Caitanya Bhagavat is the life of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So the flow is more easy to remember, and it's very refreshing at the thought of the connection of Chaitanya Bhagavat. So if you remember, Chaitanya Bhagavat begins Adi Khanda, the first 3 chapters, they discuss the birth of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The moon of Mayapur is appearing on a full moon day, and so that Vrindavan Das Thakur is always very descriptive in his writing. So compared to Chaitanya Charitamrita, Chaitanya Bhagavat is very descriptive and gives a lot of attention to details of the situation at that time, the reaction of different personalities, the beauty of the place, the emotions of each and every person in the scene. So all these things is very descriptively mentioned in Chaitanya Bhagavat. So 3 chapters describe the appearance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then we have chapter 4 to 6, which describe the childhood pastimes of Gauranga Mahaprabhu, which is known as Balya Leela. So he was the Nimai Sundar, the beautiful Nimai of Navadvip, very close to all the Navadvip Vasis. And in those chapters, we hear most of the childhood pastimes of Gaura Sundar, like the thieves stealing, the thieves kidnapping baby Nimai, and coming back to the same place. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as baby, he cries, and he gets pacified when the devotees and the neighbors, they chant the names of Hari. And so many wonderful sporting that he does in the Ganga with his friends. The Lord does a lot of water sports and mischief, just like what he used to do in Vrindavan Dham as Krishna. Those wonderful pastimes he does, similar to them he does in his childhood pastimes in Navadvip also. So those wonderful water sports of Gauranga Mahaprabhu described. And then from chapter 7 describes Vishwarupa, the elder brother of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, taking sannyas. So that is described, and how when he took sannyas, it results in the shattering the hearts of Jagannath Mishra and Sachimata, and they decide that they are not going to allow Nimai Pandit to study, because if he studies, he may also become a sannyasi like his brother. So that is also described wonderfully. And then how Nimai reacts to that, he becomes restless, he starts throwing tantrums and disturbing. And in that there are few wonderful pastimes, sweet pastimes. These pastimes we don't find in Chaitanya Charitamrita, but in Chaitanya Bhagavat, mercifully they're described. Sometimes we find that Vishwamhar, he, along with his friends, he covers himself in a blanket, and they behave like a bull. They take the disguise of a bull, and they go and they wreck a plantain grove, and they take all the bananas away, and the owner, he comes and sees, and he thinks that, oh, bull has come and attacked, and he raises a huge cry, and all the neighbors come to attack the bull and to protect the grove. But by the time everything is broken, all the trees are shattered, and the bananas are all gone, and it's not a bull, it's Gauranga Mahaprabhu himself. So the friends and Gauranga Mahaprabhu, they run away, and this person, he raises a cry, but he comes and doesn't find a bull there. So these sweet pastimes. And then one more beautiful pastime is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with his friends, Vishwamhar, then Nimai Pandit, he would go and lock the house, outside the house of a person. And so the person is inside and he wants to go to washroom. Those days the washroom is outside the house. He's banging the door, but the door is locked from outside. And Vishwamhar used to take pleasure in these activities, and he was showing all this restlessness because he was not allowed to go to school. So then another pastime which is very famous, which is also in Chaitanya Charitamrita, is that finally he goes and sits on the pile of dirty pots, and he instructs Sachimata that if you don't allow me to go to school, how will I know what is pure, what is impure? So therefore I'm like this. So then finally they decide, Jagannath Mishra and Sachimata decide that yes, we will allow Nimai Pandit, Nimai, to go to school again. And then later when he goes to school, he becomes the great Nimai Pandit of Navadvipa. So that is chapter 7. And then in chapter 8, having decided it's time for Mahaprabhu's Upanayan ceremony. He is now grown to young, in a small Brahmana boy who is ready for Upanayana. So the sacred thread ceremony is described very beautifully, how when he took the sacred thread on himself, he looked just like the Vamana incarnation. So that beautiful description is presented. And Jagannath Mishra, he enrolls him in the school of Gangadas Pandit. And then that chapter also describes the disappearance of Jagannath Mishra. Sachimata laments in the loss of Jagannath Mishra, and also Vishwarup is gone. Now she's only with Nimai, and Nimai, he solaces her. He takes to studying very seriously. That ends chapter 8. So then in chapter 9, Vrindavan Das Thakur takes a small deviation, small diversion from describing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastime, and he describes Sri Nityananda Prabhu's childhood pastime. So now the childhood pastimes of Gauranga Mahaprabhu have almost finished. Now he is a responsible boy who is taking care of his mother, and he is very seriously studying. So now, having described Gauranga Mahaprabhu's childhood pastimes, Vrindavan Das Thakur, he wants to describe Nityananda Prabhu's childhood pastimes. So as if impelled, he puts a pause to Gauranga Mahaprabhu's pastime, and he starts describing Nityananda Prabhu's birth, his childhood pastimes, him leaving Ekachakradham and going with that Brahmana and doing his Tirtha Yatra to different holy places in India, and then meeting Madhavendra Puri and taking initiation from him. So all this is described in chapter 9, glories of Nityananda Prabhu. And then Vrindavan Dasar comes back to the pastimes of Gauranga Mahaprabhu. So after the Balya Leela, the next is the Vidya Leela. When Gauranga Mahaprabhu, the moon of Navadvip Chandra, Vishwamhar, he is relishing the scholarly pastimes. He is now a great scholar studying under Gangadas Pandit, and he is a pretty good scholar that he is having his own teachers also. Being a student, not teachers, being a student, he is a teacher himself and is teaching many students also. So the scholarly pastimes are described in chapter 10, the Vidya Leela of Vishwamhar Gaur Sundar. And then he has attained the age of Yauvana, Kaishora. He is 16 years of age at this chapter. And there a beautiful verse that Vrindavan Sasakur writes, composes on the beauty of Gauranga Mahaprabhu when he is 16 is Gauranga Sundaravesh Madana Mohan Shodasha Vachara Prabhu Pratham Jovan. Gauranga Sundaravesh Madana Mohan. At his youth, he was looking just like, he was so beautiful that he could captivate Cupid. He was captivating Cupid. And he was Shodasha Vatsara. His year was 16. He attained 16 years of age. And Pratham Yauvan. He's showing his first youthful form at that time. And Sachimata, seeing the youthful form, she decides that it's time for my son to get married. So she arranges for the marriage with Sri Lakshmi Priya Devi, the daughter of Vallabha. So that chapter 10 describes this beautiful wedding of Lakshmi Priya and Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu. And then in chapter 11, the Vidya pastime, Vidya Leela of Nataraj Gauranga Mahaprabhu continues. And at that time, another great personality enters in Caitanya Bhagavat, that is Sri Ishwara Puri. He visits Navadvip and he stays in the house of Advaita Acharya. And first time Ishwara Puri and Gauranga Mahaprabhu meet. There are some wonderful pastime described there about them discussing on one book that he wrote. Gadadhar Pandit also meets Ishwara Puri. That pastime described in chapter 11. So this is all slowly building up to Mahaprabhu Sankirtan Leela. Nityananda Prabhu has come, Ishwara Puri has come, and slowly Mahaprabhu's devotional aspect is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he was a small child, young man, he described, he showed his scholarliness, his naughtiness, but he still hadn't revealed his form, the purpose of his incarnation as a devotee. So that was still not revealed. But these events all lead up to that. So it begins from there, Ishwara Puri's arrival. Then in chapter 12, Nimai Pandit, being a teacher now, with thousands of students studying under him, in the Chandi Mandapa in front of Sanjay Mukunda's house courtyard, that was a place where Mahaprabhu would teach his students. So he's teaching there, and he is now a Grihastha, and he's roaming around Navadvip. So that the way Mahaprabhu would roam around Navadvip is mentioned in this chapter. It's a very beautiful description. He goes to different shopkeepers, the weaver give him clothes, the relationship between the Navadvip Vasis and Gauranga Mahaprabhu, how much they loved him, is described in this chapter very nicely. So that is there. And in this chapter, the sweetest pastime of Sridhar, Kavalavacha Sridhar and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is there. So how he used to bargain with him, how Gauranga Mahaprabhu would tease Sridhar being a devotee. So all these wonderful descriptions are there in chapter 12. And then in chapter 13, the pinnacle of Gauranga Mahaprabhu's scholarly pastimes, like the topmost beautiful pastime of that age of Gauranga Mahaprabhu, which is him defeating the Digvijay Keshav Kashmiri. That beautiful pastime comes in chapter 13. In fact, in this Madhya Leela, Adi Khanda part 2 book, the cover picture itself is that picture of Keshav Kashmiri on the banks of Ganga being defeated by Gauranga Mahaprabhu. So one of the most beautiful pastimes of this section and it establishes Gauranga Mahaprabhu's scholarliness, how scholarly he was. All this time it describes of him debating with different personalities of his classmates, his teachers, his behavior. But in this chapter, in chapter 13, the way he very easily, very wonderfully defeats Digvijay without hurting his feelings in a very humble way is wonderfully described, and it's a wonderful chapter. And in this chapter, another beautiful thing about chapter 13 is when Keshav Kashmiri is defeated and he goes and prays to Mother Saraswati that, why did you leave me? You're always in my tongue. How could I get defeated? Saraswati Devi comes and she reveals that the small boy, the young Brahmana who defeated you, he is none other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And she glorifies Gauranga Mahaprabhu, Saraswati Devi herself, Goddess Saraswati. So that section, the prayers of Saraswati to Gauranga Mahaprabhu, is very, very beautiful indeed. That is a wonderful section that one can repeatedly read in this in Caitanya Bhagavat. And then in chapter 14, beautiful description of how wonderfully Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu is having the Grihastha Leela. He is a wonderful exemplary householder, how wonderfully Lakshmi Priya Devi is serving. They invite guests home, and that is described. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he decides to go to East Bengal to earn some wealth. In the pretext of earning wealth, he wants to go there. So he goes there. He goes to East Bengal, which is called Radhadesh, where Ganga doesn't flow. And there he is students, when they come to know that Nimai Pandit has come from Navadvipa, they all come to learn under him, and they give a lot of gifts to him. And there he meets Tapan Mishra. So the most interesting point of chapter 14, or interesting twist in Adi Khanda, is this is the first place in until now where Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu reveals his devotional aspect, and he instructs Tapan Mishra on pure bhakti. He instructs him on the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, something which Gauranga Mahaprabhu had not yet done at all. So he gives the first instructions of Gauranga Mahaprabhu comes up here in relation to bhakti. First, just like we have the glorious teachings to Rupa Goswami, glorious teachings to Sanatan Goswami. So like that, the first teaching of Gauranga Mahaprabhu to Tapan Mishra. And he also reveals his future plan and says that they will meet future in Varanasi, don't come with me now. So here, Gauranga Mahaprabhu is very openly describing and wonderfully explaining the bhakti, the movement which he had come to start. So that first time he is revealing here. Very interesting chapter 14. It ends with Tapan Mishra's, Mahaprabhu's instruction to Tapan Mishra, and he's coming back. In chapter 14, another thing described is when Mahaprabhu is in East Bengal, back in Navadvip, due to separation of Gauranga Mahaprabhu, Lakshmi Priya Devi leaves the world. So that is described. So when in chapter 15, when the Lord comes back to Navadvip, Sachi Mata, she organizes for the second wedding of Gaur Sundar with Vishnu Priya Devi. So that is described. And in comparison to Lakshmi Priya's wedding, we see Vishnu Priya Devi's wedding is more elaborately described. And the way the place was decorated, the way they both were decorated, the rituals that happened, it's all wonderfully described. And speciality was that this wedding was sponsored by a rich man called Buddhimanta Khan. So that's a very beautiful, it's very related to Navadvip Dham in Godhirmadvip. We have the pastime place of Buddhimanta Khan. So he was a wonderful devotee of Gauranga Mahaprabhu. So that Leela is wonderfully described, how Vishnu Priya Devi married Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu. So then that is the gist of chapter 15. So now we've come to chapter 16, where we are today. So again, after, so now Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is second married. He's a wonderful, scholarly, most greatest sought out teacher of Navadvipa. Navadvipa, it is described in Adi Khanda. You have already crossed this description. It says that Chaturdike hoite lok Navadvipe jai. Navadvipe Podile She Vidya Rasa Pai. It's a beautiful verse that describes the glory of Navadvip Dham during Mahaprabhu's time, how scholarly Navadvip Dham was. Chaturdike Lok, Navadvipe Jai. From all four directions of the world, people would come to Navadvip. And it was said that Navadvipe Podile, if that person studied in Navadvip, She Vidya Rasa Pai, he gets the mellows of Vidya, of knowledge. So it was such a rich place. And in such a place, the most sought out teacher was Sri Gaur Sundar, Nimai Sundar, Vishwamhar, Gaur Hari, Mayapur Chandra. He was the sought out teacher. And thousands of students would follow him. So that with that, the Vidya Rasa, Vidya Leela of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu described. And it almost ends over here. And then in chapter 16, again Vrindavan Das Thakur takes a deviation. He puts a pause to the direct description of Gauranga Mahaprabhu's pastime and he begins to glorify Haridas Thakur. So why does he suddenly glorify Haridas Thakur? In both the places, when he took a diversion to describe Nityananda Prabhu's pastime in chapter 9 and here in chapter 16 he is suddenly glorifying Haridas Thakur, it appears as if he is being impelled to do this. So something was impelling him that it's time now we have to describe this. So he's resisting from describing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastime and he's suddenly coming to describe Haridas Thakur. So I'm sure you had wonderful classes for the past few days on the first 15 verses of this chapter, which have wonderful heavy purports from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Prabhupada. So first we'll start reading from chapter 15 today. Mataji, the verses will be displayed. I have them in the book with me here, but for others, or I'll read it from the book directly.
Mataji, we can read. You can read from the book, Mataji. That is okay, Mataji.
शून्य देखी भक्तगण सकल संसार हा कृष्ण बोलिया दुख भावे न अपार. Okay, so now Vrindavan Das Thakur is describing the situation of Navadvipa at that time when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was married to Vishnupriya Devi, Gauranga Mahaprabhu, performing pastimes, and at that time, what was the situation of Navadvip? The devotees saw the entire world as devoid of devotional service, so they prayed to Krishna in great distress. So as we saw how Navadvip was a place for Vidyaras, people from all four directions would come to Navadvip to study. But the study was all materialistic. And Navadvip was very scholarly, very famous, and the whole world at that time was materially very ahead in different things. But spiritually, they were all devoid. They were devoid of devotional service. So Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur says, Shunya means devoid of devotion to Lord Krishna. And there were a lot of pure devotees in Navadvip, headed by Srivas Thakur, Advaita Acharya, Mukunda, Murari Gupta. So many wonderful devotees were there in Navadvip, but they were a very handful in comparison to the total number of people. And these pure devotees would regularly meet. They would relish Srimad Bhagavatam. They would loudly chant the holy names of the Lord, and they would perform the bhakti activities wonderfully. But it's natural for devotees to be compassionate on the world. And when they saw that all around them, the people were so devoid of Krishna consciousness, they were so materialistically attached and performing all kind of heinous activities, such as all the symptoms of Kali were there, killing animals and performing other sinful activities, demigod worship, and nobody chanting the holy names of the Lord, which is the Yuga Dharma. They were taking they were being very distressed. Dukkha bhavena apar. They were feeling great high distress seeing the people around, and therefore they were praying to the Supreme Lord. They prayed to Krishna. So Siddhanta Thakur says, the pure devotees of the Lord always prayed to Krishna and deeply considered how to remove the unlimited miseries of the distressed conditioned living entities. So very interesting point that how pure devotees, they always pray to Krishna when they have distress all around. So actually in the previous verses, in the last class, you would have heard how the people of Nadia were not happy with these with the devotees loudly chanting the holy names of the Lord, that they were planning to break the doors, attack the devotees. So all these situation was going on. So the devotees, they were praying to the Lord. So the situation is so unfavorable all around, and the devotees are praying. So this is a wonderful quality of pure devotees, that they surrender to the Lord in all circumstances. They pray. Even amidst most unfavorable circumstance, they don't give up devotional service. They don't give up their compassion for the living entities. So when I was reading this purport aloud, my mother was, she was telling that this exactly reminds of Srila Prabhupada, that how when he was surrounded by the most unfavorable circumstance, living in the most horrible places in the US, at that time, how he was feeling compassion for the souls around rather than anger or giving up his mission. He was feeling compassion on them, and he tried to preach to them. He tried to give Krishna consciousness to them. So this is exactly like the pure devotees here. They were happily chanting. When they were chanting and reading Bhagavatam in the association, the small association that they had, they were feeling unlimited bliss. Transcendental loving exchanges were happening between them, but they were still compassionate and feeling distress, looking at the soul suffering all around them. So just like Prabhupada, how when he was in the Bawari or in different places, he was surrounded by such low-class people who didn't know any basic culture even. And he was so compassionate on them, and mercifully he taught them slowly everything, and he gave them Krishna consciousness. He of course, we can read in his own compositions, Markandeya Bhagavad Dharma and other songs, how much he prayed to the Lord and how much he surrendered to the Lord and his spiritual master for doing that. So that was the situation. It was the situation few years ago, just during Prabhupada's time, and also 500 years ago during Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's time. And even today, it is like that. The world is still in a very horrible condition, and there are so many pure devotees following in the footsteps of these Vaishnavas during Mahaprabhu's time, following footsteps of Prabhupada and all our acharyas, and so wonderfully preaching and trying to give Krishna to all the conditioned souls. So that is very inspiring. So proceeding ahead in verse 16. Henokale tathayaila Haridas Shuddha Vishnu Bhakti Jar Vigrahe Prakash. At that time, Haridas Thakur arrived in Navadvipa. He was the personification of pure devotion to Lord Vishnu. So this is the opening scene, the entry of Haridas Thakur into Chaitanya Bhagavata. So in this book, this is the place where Haridas is first entering. And like generally when a hero enters, or when a very important person enters, it's very common to display the issues in that place, or there is a huge commotion going on, or there is some big issue going on, and the hero comes and he solves everything. So like that is generally the hero entry in a movie or in any place. So in this wonderful book, which is describing the pastimes of the ultimate hero, the hero of Mayapur, Sri Mayapur Chandra, Haridas Thakur's entry is in this way, in such a beautiful way. So when all the devotees were sincerely praying to Krishna to somehow give devotion to the people all around, when it was surrounded by atheists, and when if the whole place was devoid of devotional service, at such a time enters Haridas Thakur. And here Vrindavan Das Thakur describes him as he was a personification of pure devotion to Lord Vishnu. So the personification of devotion was coming when the devotees are praying that this place is devoid of devotional service. Please, oh Lord, do something. And at that time, Haridas Thakur is a personification of pure devotion is entering. So Vrindavan Das Thakur is so beautiful. This shows that how impelling it was for him to describe Haridas Thakur in this particular place. So Haridas Thakur is entering into Navadvipa. So, purport by Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada. When the pure devotees were lamenting the absence of pure devotional service throughout the entire country, at that time, by the will of Krishna, Sri Haridas Thakur arrived in Navadvip, Mayapur. So it was by the will of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna that Haridas Thakur arrived. Sri Haridas Thakur was not a preacher or of pseudo devotional service. It's a beautiful point. Haridas Thakur was not a preacher of pseudo devotional service, which means that he was not. There can be two meanings to this. One is pseudo devotional service means just external show of devotion and not in the proper mood. That is pseudo devotion. And he was not a preacher of that kind of pseudo devotion, which means he was properly practicing bhakti and therefore was properly preaching bhakti. So in Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's a wonderful verse which Sanatana Goswami is addressing to Haridas Thakur again. In that, Sanatana Goswami says, "Apone achare keho na kore prachar, prachar kore na keho na kore na achar." So some people, achare, they behave very well. Their achar, their sadhana is very well, but they do not preach Krishna consciousness. Na kare prachar. And some prachar kare na keho, they do wonderful preaching. They try to preach, but they do not behave properly. Na kahe na achar. They don't na kare na achar. They don't follow that properly. They don't behave in the proper way. And then Sanatana Goswami says, "But oh Haridas Thakur, you are expert in both. You properly behave, your sadhana, your achar is very good, and therefore your prachar is also very good." So that was Haridas Thakur. He was not a preacher of pseudo devotional service, and he was not a materially motivated preacher, but he was perfect in his behavior, in his own sadhana, of course, chanting 3 lakh names per day. That was his sadhana. So his sadhana was so strong, and therefore his preaching also was so wonderful. We will see how his preaching was as to come in the coming section. In fact, very interestingly, Haridas Thakur was the first person to be ordered by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to preach. So, Shuna Shuna Nityananda, Shuna Haridas. That is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said. So that all will come for you in Madhya Khanda. Vrindavan Thakur will reveal at that time. So then, he was always engaged in unalloyed execution of pure devotional service, which is without any ulterior motives, which is free from speculation on the impersonal Brahman, and which is devoid of the desire for enjoying material happiness. This was the type of bhakti that Haridas Thakur was doing, executing unalloyed pure devotional service without any ulterior motives. So this word ulterior motives reminds me, now we are reading in our classes here, we are reading Kapila Siksha, and in that our teacher was explaining. So Kapila Dev, he wonderfully in 3rd canto of Bhagavatam, in chapter 29, he describes what is bhakti with ulterior motives. Is it possible to execute bhakti's ulterior motives? Yes, it does happen. It happens in the case of every sadhaka, that at some time we do execute devotion with ulterior motives, but we have to overcome that. And here Haridas Thakur is described by Saraswati Prabhupada that without any ulterior motives, he is performing devotional service. So what is ulterior motives? Kapila Muni uses a very important word for this, which is called bhinnadrik or pratak bhava. So he uses both these words, which means separatist. Prabhupada translates it in the word-to-word meaning as separatist. So which means that he is having interest, he's having his own interest, which is different from Supreme Lord's interest. So that is exactly the meaning of bhinnadrik or separatist. So when you have your own interest other than the Supreme Lord's interest, then that bhakti is performed with ulterior motives. So Kapila Muni very deeply, it goes on to describe the 3 modes, devotion performed in 3 modes, bhakti in 3 modes, and they are examples of devotion with ulterior motives. So a person who is having his own interest, apart from the Lord's interest, a bhinnadrik person, a separatist, he is the one who does devotion with ulterior motives, which means that his devotion is tinged with one of the 3 modes. But here Haridas Thakur, when it says that he was performing devotion without any ulterior motives, it means that his devotion was on the platform of Shuddha Sattva. devoid of the three modes, completely pure. Text 17. Ebe shuna Haridas Thakurera Katha Jahar Shravane Krishna Paibe Sarvatha. Now please hear the topics of Srila Haridas Thakur, for by hearing this narration one certainly attains Krishna. Text 18. Budha nogramete avatirna Haridas She bhagye she shav deshe kirtana prakash. Haridas Thakur appeared in the village of Budhana, and as a result, that province is filled with kirtan even today. Hari Bol. So this is the greatness of a Vaishnava. It is said that Darshane Pavitra Karo e Tomara Gun. The glory of a pure Vaishnava is that by just taking his darshan, one gets purified. One's heart gets purified. Haridas Thakur is an eternally perfect associate of the Lord. He appeared in a Mohammedan family in the village of Budhan within the district of Jessore. Due to his mercy, many persons in the district of Jessore obtained piety and became faithful to the chanting of Krishna's holy names. So since birth, Budhan is the place where he was born. So since birth, he was chanting the holy names of the Lord. And just by seeing him and by receiving his mercy, many persons in the district, they received Sukriti, and thus they could become faithful to chanting the holy names of the Lord. So it's very interesting that Haridas Thakur being born in a Mohammedan family. Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu, he came to establish the Sankirtan movement. And for that, he chose such a beautiful person to be the lead, to be the role model for all the Vaishnavas. So Haridas Thakur is a Namacharya. So Mahaprabhu chose him to be the Namacharya, and just look at his background. Born in a Mohammedan family and rejected by all classes of people. The Hindus would not accept him because he was born in a Mlecha family. The Muslims would not accept him because he was born in a Muslim family but taking to Hindu religion. So he was rejected by everyone, but still he was such a strong, he was chanting 3 lakh names, such a wonderful Vaishnava that the Vaishnava community accepted him, and in Vaishnava community he was given the topmost respect. In fact, Advaita Acharya, when he was performing the Shraddha ceremony of his father, at that time the first plate is given to a very qualified Brahmana. That is called the Vishnu's plate. It is offered to a Brahmana in whom we invoke Lord Vishnu to come and accept the offering. So that plate Advaita Acharya gave to Haridas Thakur. Haridas Thakur was so, the whole world had rejected him, but the Vaishnava community, they could understand that he was a great Vaishnava. Anyone who chants the holy name of the Lord, Devahuti says, Aho bato swapacho gariyan jihvagre vartate namatubhyam. So even if a Chandala takes to chanting the holy name of the Lord, he is to be worshipped. He rises in his level. That is the power of chanting the holy name, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to show this power of chanting the holy name, the power of the holy name, which is directly coming from Golok Vrindavan. So that he wonderfully executed by choosing Haridas Thakur, by choosing a person born in such a background, that how a person born like that also, by chanting holy name, he can be elevated to the highest position as the Namacharya, revered by all the great Vaishnavas, the great Brahmanas in the Vaishnava community. That is a very wonderful, how can I say, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's wonderful activity, his choice of person that he chose to make the Namacharya. That's very interesting. Text 19. Kotodin thakiya aila ganga tire, ashiya rohila phuliya shantipure. After residing there for some time, which means after residing in Jessore for some time, he came to the bank of the Ganges at Phulia near Shantipur. Phulia is a remote village near Shantipur. Thakur Haridas lived for some time in both Phulia and Shantipur, both of which are situated on the banks of the Ganges. So this place Phulia is within the governmental Bhumi, and it's a wonderful place which we recently visited. So Mayapur Tourism, we regularly take tours to these governmental places. And once I got to go with them, and we also had His Grace Atul Krishna Prabhu accompanying us, and we went to this particular place, Fulia, where even today there is the cave where Haridas Thakur stayed and chanted. It's a very beautiful place, very close to Shantipur. Advaitacharya's house is there. So there in this place, we can even today feel the presence of Haridas Thakur. The acharyas are always present in their pastime places. So this place we went, and it's right on the banks of the Ganges, as it's described. It's very merciful of the Lord and the acharyas that even today, 500 years after their pastimes, still they have kept these holy places for us, so that we can go and take darshan, get their mercy, and beg for their mercy. Text 20. Paiyar taha sanga acharya goshai, hunkar kore no anander antanai. Upon obtaining Haridas's association, Advaitacharya rode in unlimited ecstasy. Purport by Siddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada. Having received the association of Thakur Haridas, Sri Advaita Prabhu felt great happiness and often expressed an outburst of this joy. Hunkara Koren. Advaitacharya rode in unlimited ecstasy, having the association of Haridas Thakur. So one Vaishnava can recognize another Vaishnava. And this is how one should feel when one meets another Vaishnava. They are setting example that when we meet another Vaishnava, another devotee, we should be jubilant. At least in the least, we should be happy. Even if not ecstatically jubilant, we should be least happy, but never morose or never ever think, oh Krishna, this person has come in front of me now, he might catch me for some time. Or what do I do? I've come in front of him. How do I escape this person? That's actually is one of the Vaishnava parad also. So when one meets the Vaishnava, here we are being taught. In fact, all the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Chaitanya Bhagavat, these all show us the wonderful Vaishnava dealings. How Vaishnavas should deal between them. How Vaishnavas should deal with the outside world. This is wonderfully taught by them, and it's very easy for us to relate because it's very close to us. Krishna's pastimes, what we read in Bhagavatam, how the like Parishad Maharaj, Dhruva Maharaj, all great Vaishnavas, how they behaved. These things we see in Bhagavatam, but it's a little bit unrelatable to us because it belongs to a different time, different yuga in the whole case. But pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates that we hear, they are so close to us just 500 years ago, and therefore the atmosphere, the kind of people, it's all very relatable to us. Their dealings, the way they behave is relatable, and therefore we should be able to follow them. We should take inspiration from them. Here, Advaitacharya is so jubilant with ecstasy. He has Anander Antanai. There is no limit to his bliss, it says. So, like that, we should that's what we should aim for. That when we see a Vaishnava, we are so jubilant, we are so happy. But at least if we can't reach that point, at least in the least, we should be happy when we see a Vaishnava. We should be satisfied, we should be pleased. Hare Krishna Prabhu, greet him with a smiling face, and not even at the least in our mind, we should not have the thought that slightest moroseness in seeing a Vaishnava. Because it's so rare to see a Vaishnava nowadays. It's in this world, we are seeing how during Mahaprabhu's time it was, and even today, how many devotees are there in the world? A very handful in comparison to the world population. And they have all these Vaishnavas whom we meet who have taken to devotional service are all very fortunate people. It's not so easy to take up the Krishna consciousness. So having taken up out of the thousands and millions of people in the world, this person is fortunate to have got association of Vaishnavas and taken up devotional service. So he is a fortunate man. He is an important person. And therefore, when we see a Vaishnava, we should be pleased. We should be joyous that we have met them. So it's a great fortune to get the association of a Vaishnava in today's world. So here, Advaitacharya is showing by his wonderful example that when he met Haridas and Advaitacharya went very well. They were almost of the same age, and they were very close to each other despite the differences. So one might say that there is differences between him and me culturally. Different differences could be there, and therefore you can say that I'm not happy when I see him because we are culturally different. We don't go well together in different opinions and all. But just look at the difference between Advaita and Haridas Thakur. Advaita was born in a great, wonderful Brahmin family, and Haridas Thakur born in a Mohammedan family. Naturally, there would be cultural differences between them. Family differences were there, but they are so happy seeing each other. Text 21. Haridas Thakuro Advaita Deva Shange Bhashena Govinda Rasa Samudrata Range. Similarly, in the association of Advaita Prabhu, Haridas Thakur floated in the waves of ocean of Krishna consciousness. Bhashena Govinda Rasa Samudra Tarange. Such a beautiful composition by Vrindavan Das Thakur. Such a simple Bengali, so sweet, like waves. Govinda Rasa Samudra Tarange. Samudra in the ocean, they were floating in the waves, Tarange, of the ocean. Of what kind of ocean? Govinda Rasa. In discussing in the mellows of Govinda, in discussion of the pastimes of Govinda Dev, of Sri Krishna, they were in that ocean, they were in the waves of that ocean, they were floating, both of them. By the influence of Sri Advaita Prabhu's association, Haridas Thakur also floated in the ocean of the transcendental mellows of Krishna consciousness. Many devotees think that since Haridas Thakur was busy in only chanting the holy names, he did not enter into relishing the transcendental mellows in relationship with Govinda. This is a misconception that was there. This two kind of people have. One is the Prakrita Sahajiyas, who think that by chanting you can't experience rasa. It's very boring. Rather, we can imitate the rasa of Krishna's pastimes, and therefore, instead of chanting and trying to purify one's heart, they try to imitate the mellows of Vrindavan, and that is what the Sahajiyas do. So this is one wrong understanding of Haridas Thakur, that he was always chanting. It must have been boring for him. He never got to experience rasa. But here it says they were always floating in Govinda rasa. And another misconception about Haridas Thakur that devotees generally have is that he was all day sitting and chanting. 3 lakh names would take so many hours, they will calculate and say that. So he would practically sleep for this much time, eat, and whole day he would be chanting in one place. But actually, like I was saying before, Haridas Thakur was the person first chosen by Mahaprabhu for preaching. And he says, go, Nityananda Haridas, go and preach in Navadvip. Prati ghare ghare giya, go and go to each house, ghare ghare, go to each house in Navadvip and preach. Make them, Kaha Krishna, Bhaja Krishna, Kara Krishna Siksha. Tell them about Krishna. So Haridas Thakur would do that. And every day evening, he and Nityananda would come and report to Gauranga Mahaprabhu in Srivas Angan about the day's preaching, that we went to this many houses, we preached so much. Reporting system was there. So Haridas Thakur was not simply sitting and chanting in one place, but he would chant 3 lakh names a day, plus he would go and preach. He did preaching also. So they were the first preachers actually in history, first book distributors going door to door and giving the message of Krishna, and giving the message of Navadvip Chandra, Gauranga Mahaprabhu. So this is another misconception that Haridas Thakur was always sitting and chanting in one place. He was chanting, he was serving Vaishnavas, taking association, participating in Kirtan, in Rath Yatra, he's dancing, plus preaching. He would do a lot of activities in the day. Simply by chanting the holy names of Krishna, one relishes the transcendental mellows related with Krishna. There is no possibility of relishing the transcendental mellows related with Krishna by any other process. Thakur Haridas was the actual knower of the transcendental mellows related with Krishna, and he is the principal teacher for understanding Rasa Shastras, or literatures filled with the transcendental mellows. So he is not only Namacharya, but he's also Rasacharya. He is the principal teacher. Saraswati Thakur describes him as the principal teacher for understanding Rasa Shastras. So this is the key to bhakti, to relishing bhakti. Only when you relish chanting can we relish the bhakti rasa. And this Haridas Thakur demonstrated. It's not for no reason that he's Namacharya. He demonstrates to us that how, here Siddhanta Thakur says, that the only one process by which one can relish the rasas of Vrindavan, of Krishna, is by chanting. So only as we chant and our hearts be purified, will these rasas be revealed to us. It is not possible by any other means. Chanting is the only way. And by chanting, when one starts, like Haridas Thakur, one starts relishing chanting, one can't give up chanting the holy names of the Lord. When Haridas Thakur was so sick during his last days of his manifest pastimes, he was so sick, Gauranga Mahaprabhu went and told him that, I think you should reduce the number of rounds. It's too much for you. Please take care of your health. So Haridas Thakur said that my mind is not well and I cannot give up my chanting. So he was so attached to chanting. It was a disease was not that his body was not, his body disease was not his real disease. He said that me giving up chanting would be a disease condition for me. So that was the word of Haridas Thakur. So really relishing chanting is very important. Haridas Thakur's prayer in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Haridas Thakur, he prays to, he recites a verse, which is his prayer to the Lord. He says, Kripa kori nama rupe mora jihvaya, nirantara nacha prabhu dharitava paya. Oh Krishna, I'm holding your lotus feet. Oh, oh holy name, I'm literally holding your lotus feet. Dharitava paya. I'm holding your lotus feet and begging. What? Mercifully, Kripa kori nama rupe mora jihvaya. In the form of your holy name, please mercifully dance on my tongue. Nirantara nacha prabhu. On my tongue, please always dance. So when Haridas Thakur was chanting, he was feeling the holy name dancing on his tongue, enjoying, he was relishing the Lord Krishna dancing. That was the mood of chanting of Haridas Thakur. So when one is relishing chanting in that way, then one will be able to relish the transcendental mellows of Krishna. That is explained. Text 22. Niravadhi Haridas Ganga Tire Tire Bhramena Kautuke Krishna Boli Ucha Share. Haridas would continually wander on the banks of the Ganges while loudly chanting the names of Krishna. Loudly chanting. Reading purport. Reading the situation of Haridas Thakur. Regarding the situation of Haridas Thakur, it is stated in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Shantiravvyartha kalatvam viraktirmana shunyata ashabandha samatkantha namagane sadarachi ashaktistadgunakhyane pritistadvasati sthale ityadvayo nubhavasyur jata bhavankure jani. So this is, I'm sure all of you might be knowing this. This is Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, where these are the qualities that will manifest, the symptoms that will manifest in a person who is attaining the bhava stage. When the seed of ecstatic emotion for Krishna fructifies, the following 9 symptoms manifest in one's body. Forgiveness, concern that time should not be wasted. Detachment, absence of false prestige. Hope, eagerness, a taste for chanting the holy name of the Lord. Attachment to the descriptions of the transcendental qualities of the Lord, and affection for those places where the Lord resides, like a holy place like Vrindavan or a temple. So these are the 9 qualities, 9 symptoms. These are called anubhavas, subordinate signs of ecstatic emotions. They are visible in a person in whose heart the seed of devotion, seed of love of God has begun to fructify. So all our aim of all the devotees is to attain bhava stage, right? We all perform devotional service, perform our sadhana to one day attain love of God. So these symptoms are the signs in a person in whose heart the seed of love of God has begun to fructify. So we are all aiming for love of God. So we should always be aware of the signs that will manifest in that stage. This is what we're aiming for. So these qualities, my Bhakti Vaibhav teacher would always say this, that even when if you're sleeping, in your sleep also somebody wakes you up, you should be able to wake up and tell all these 9 symptoms. because a devotee should be very well acquainted with these symptoms, because this is what we're aiming for. Our ultimate achievement is to achieve these 9 symptoms. Avyartha kala, not wasting a single moment without the service of the Lord. Virakti, Amana Shonyata, Asha Bana Samutkanta, Namagane Sadaruchi, being always attached to chanting the holy name of the Lord. Detachment, these are all these 9 qualities. This verse or the English meaning of the 9 qualities should always, 9 symptoms should always be in our mind, and we should always be able to remember and always look out to developing these symptoms and nurturing them in us. Also in Srimad Bhagavatam, Kavi, one of the 9 Yogendras, says to Nimi, the king of Videha, as follows: Evam vratasva priya nama kirtya jatanurago dhitachitta uchchai hasatyadhoro datika rauti gayati unmadavan nrityati lokabahyah. By chanting the holy name of the Supreme Lord, one comes to the stage of love of Godhead. Then the devotee is fixed in his vow as an eternal servant of the Lord, and he gradually becomes very much attached to a particular name and form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As his heart melts with ecstatic love, he laughs very loudly or cries or shouts. Sometimes he sings and dances like a madman, for he is indifferent to public opinion. These are all the qualities of a pure devotee, and Haridas Thakur was manifesting these qualities. He was wandering on the bank of Ganges, loudly chanting the names of the Lord. Text 23. Vishaya sukhete biraktera agraganya Krishna name paripurna Shrivadana dhanya. Haridas was most renounced in the matter of material enjoyment, and his mouth was always beautified with the chanting of Lord Krishna's names. Purport: the tongue of Sri Haridas Thakur was always engaged in chanting the holy names of Krishna. His tongue, which constantly chanted the names of Krishna, was extraordinarily attractive. Since he was completely indifferent to material enjoyment, detachment for all such enjoyment awakened in him. A wonderful quality of bhakti is when you perform bhakti properly, detachment naturally it comes up. And this is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to teach. He came to teach Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga Sikshartameva Purusha Purana Sri Krishna Chaitanya Sharira Dhari. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to teach renunciation, Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga, to teach renunciation and Nija Bhakti Yoga and devotion to the Supreme Lord. So it's very Mahaprabhu always wanted his disciples, his followers, to have renunciation in them. And Vairagya Pradhan, crest jewel of Vairagi, was our Raghunath Dasa Goswami. So the holy names of Krishna never dance on the tongues of those who are material enjoyers. That is the clue. If you want to relish the transcendental mellows of Krishna, you need to chant, you need to relish chanting the holy names. And if we are having material desires and we want to be material enjoyers, then the holy names of Krishna never dance on our tongues. So you cannot have your leg in both the boats. Material enjoyment bhi chahiye, and I also want spiritual bliss is not possible. You have to give up one and come in one boat. And of course, this is the higher taste. So it's not that when you leave that boat, you're going to miss something. You're going to get something better and something which is very rare. Those who are busy enjoying the 6 mundane rasas and whose hearts are always disturbed with desires and greed for material happiness never develop any taste for chanting the holy names of the Lord. The pseudo-renunciants who are aloof from the chanting of the holy names are also indifferent to chanting like the material enjoyers. Pseudo-renunciants. So we have different varieties of Vairagya. Markata Vairagya, monkey-leg renunciation, all Prabhupada describes in his purports. So pseudo-renunciation is when you try to imitate and you renounce in a premature state. That is pseudo-renunciation. So renunciation needs to develop on its own accord as we perform devotion. Thakur Haridas was completely detached from enjoying material happiness and thus remained on the topmost platform. Yeah. Text 24. Kshanek Govinda name nahi ko virakti bhakti rase anukshana hoy nana murti. He did not give up chanting the names of Govinda for even a moment, and as a result, he was constantly manifesting various ecstatic symptoms. Thakur Haridas was never in any way indifferent to chanting the names of Govinda. He was constantly merged in the transcendental mellows related with Krishna. So now on from text 25 to text 30, 25 to 35 verses describe the ecstatic symptoms that appeared on his body externally when he was because of his pure love for Krishna. কখনো করে না নৃত্য আপনি আপনি কখনো করে না মত্ত সিংহ প্রায় ধ্বনি. Sometimes he danced alone and sometimes he roared like a mad lion. কখনো বা উচ্চেশ্বরে করে না রদন অট্ট অট্ট মহাহাস্য হাসে না কখন. Sometimes he cried loudly and sometimes he laughed loudly. কখনো গর্জন অতি হুঙ্কার করিয়া কখনো মূর্ছিত হয় তাকে ন পড়িয়া. Sometimes he roared loudly and sometimes he fell to the ground unconscious. ক্ষণে অলৌকিক শব্দ বলেন ডাকিয়া ক্ষণে তাই বাখানেন উত্তম করিয়া. Sometimes he would utter some unnatural sounds for which he would later give some profound meaning. Ashrupad Romaharsha Hasya Murcha Gham Krishna Bhakti Vikarero Jato Ache Marma. He manifested all the different ecstatic symptoms like crying, hair standing on end, laughing, losing consciousness, and perspiring. So these are all the list of wonderful ecstatic symptoms that would appear on his body. So these external symptoms, if we note, these can be sometimes imitated, and people can imitate these things: hair standing on end, laughing, losing consciousness, crying, perspiring. These things can all very easily be imitated. But in the beginning, I mean, just before these 5 verses, we saw one important quality of Haridas Thakur, which was his detachment, his renunciation of material enjoyment, and always chanting the holy name. So this is something that nobody can imitate. I remember in Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 2, when all the in chapter 2, in Canto 2, chapter 2, description of the bhaktis of devotional service is there. In that, in one of the purports, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments that external symptoms can be imitated, but the primary symptom is the renunciation. There are some internal symptoms and there are some external symptoms. External symptoms everybody can see and they can be carried away by that, but the most important testing point is the internal symptoms, which is something that only we can check, which is known to Supreme Lord, to the spiritual master, and ourselves. So these people we cannot cheat. We cannot cheat ourselves. We should not cheat ourselves. We cannot cheat Krishna and we cannot cheat Guru. So we can't cheat the rest of the world by showing external symptoms. But internally, the main check is the taste for chanting the holy name and the renunciation. It is like a two-way scale. As your taste for chanting increases, your attachment to material things will decrease. So this should happen, this balance. And this is the ultimate test for a devotee, which we all can test ourselves on. So all external symptoms were manifested by Haridas Thakur as they were all symptoms of his internal devotional growth. Because of his pure devotion, he was manifesting naturally. These qualities were coming. These qualities we can repeatedly read in Chaitanya Charitamrita with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nityananda Prabhu, all the wonderful spiritual Vaishnava Acharyas, they all manifest these qualities. Prabhu, text 30. Prabhu Haridas Matra Nritya Praveshile Shakalashriyata Shri Vigraha Mile, Shri Vigrahe Mile. As soon as Haridas began to dance, these symptoms would all manifest in his body. The word Shri Vigraha, purport by Sri Siddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada, the word Shri Vigraha is explained as follows. The body of Sri Haridas Thakur is not a lump of blood, flesh and skin like that of an ordinary fruitive worker. As a result of serving the holy names, various pure ecstatic transformations would manifest in his transcendental body. The Vaishnava associates of the Lord, who are inclined towards his service, manifest many pure ecstatic transformations in their transcendental bodies, unlike the ordinary fruitive workers, who become averse to the cultivation of Krishna consciousness while gratifying their material bodies. So here Haridas Thakur's body is described as Shri Vigrahe, that all the symptoms Shri Vigrahe Mile. So when he would start dancing in and chanting the names of the Lord, all the symptoms that we just read, list of around I think more than 10 symptoms, they would all just come and manifest in his Shri Vigraha, in his body. So body is how we can translate Shri Vigraha. That's what it literally means, but Shri Vigraha, it means that transcendental body. So Haridas Thakur's body was no longer a body of any normal person like all of us, made of flesh and blood and bones, but rather it was so pure that the transcendental emotions, transcendental symptoms were coming in his body. And the bodies of all the Vaishnava associates of Gauranga Mahaprabhu, the acharyas, were all like this. They should not consider their body like made of flesh and blood. And when I was reading this, we were thinking of, it was reminding me of one point that, which I have heard, I don't remember who I heard it from, but it's a wonderful statement I heard, that with devotional strength, one can surpass bodily limitations. And this is a wonderful statement that I heard. I just can't remember where I heard it, but it's a wonderful statement that I always remember, that this is the, that's why we see that many Vaishnava acharyas and very wonderful devotees, they sometimes do things that we can't even imagine, which is, you can say, kind of humanly impossible, but they have done it. So that is, they have a material body, but the activities they do are completely transcendental. It's very impossible and very astonishing for us to see. The most classic example that I remember when I think of the statement is Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami composing Caitanya Charitamrita when he was above 90 years of age. When he was so old, in the banks of Radha Kund, by the order of the Vaishnavas and Sri Madan Mohanji, he starts composing Chaitanya Charitamrita, such a voluminous, philosophically such a deep, Sanskrit literary wise such a beautiful work, which is very important for all the Vaishnavas today, which is such a treasure to the whole Vaishnava community. At the age of 90 plus, he could write that, he could compose that. That is a humanly impossible task, and he did that, he accomplished that. So the bodily limitations are never a matter when one is devotionally so strong. Devotion, the Lord desires to execute the work through that person. So when the Lord takes over and he is executing an astonishing task through a Vaishnava, then that person's body is no more material, it's completely transcendental. It's the property of the Supreme Lord. Another example is Jagannath Babaji Maharaj. When he came here to Navadvip Mayapur, he came to Antardvip to identify the birthplace of Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu, Yogapith. Bhaktivinoda Thakur brought him. He could not walk. He was brought in a basket, and he was so weak. He was more than 100 years. I don't remember the exact number of years, but he was more than 100, 120. And he couldn't open his eyes. His servant would come and open his eyelids so that he could see. That kind of situation was his. That was his bodily situation. But when he touched the transcendental ground of Yogapith Dham, the place where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared, birthplace, the house of which you're reading now, all the in the past few chapters of Chaitanya Bhagavat, you are reading the past that happened in the courtyard of Jagannath Mishra Sachi Mata. In that very place, when Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj came, he began to jump from his basket, and he was jumping 6 feet from the ground, which is almost the height of a man. More than that, he was jumping and dancing and loudly chanting, Aitto Nimai Janmastan, Jai Sachinandan. This is my Nimai's birthplace. So this is humanly impossible task, but he was empowered by the Lord. So this all proof that how this the body of the Vaishnava Acharyas is not material. It is Shri Vigraha. Just like the Supreme Lord's the deity form is called Shri Vigraha. Shri Vigraha Aradhana Namnam Shringara Tadmandiram Ajanadav. That is how we address the form of the Lord and the deity. The same way the form of the devotees are also like the form of the Lord. They're all transcendental. Siddhanta Thakur is elaborating on that point on this one word that is used by Vrindavan Das Thakur. Text 31. Henoshe Anandadhar Tite Sarva Anga Ati Pashandiyo Dekhi Pai Maharanga. Haridas's entire body became wet as tears of love flowed from his eyes. Even staunch atheists would offer him respect. When Haridas Thakur chanted the names of Krishna out of love, tears flowed from his eyes and his entire body would become wet. Even the most atheistic offenders who were devoid of devotional service became astonished on seeing such transcendentally ecstatic transformations. So, this is the effect of the purity of Haridas Thakur. So pure devotee who was performing pure devotional service, and therefore all the transcendental symptoms manifested in him. And his power of his purity is so much that even the atheists who were devoid, who were atheistic offenders, most atheistic offenders, devoid of devotional service, even they would be astonished and they would offer respects to Haridas Thakur. They would, in a way, adore Haridas Thakur. That is even the Vaishnavas, they can even melt the most hard-hearted people also. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it said that Parama Karuna song, Lakshmana Thakur says that even the stones, they can sing the glories of Gauranga Mahaprabhu. He is so merciful, he can melt the stones also. So even the Pashu Pakhi Jure Pashana Bithore Shri Tara Gunagatha. Even within stones, we can hear the glories of Gauranga Mahaprabhu. He is such a wonderful person. So like that, the Vaishnavas, the Acharyas also, they are so strong, they're so merciful that they can even make the hearts, the stone hearts of atheistic offenders also, they can make them soft. They can try to soften, they can start softening it, and only when the heart is a bit soft only you can start adoring Vaishnavas. So that was the power of Haridas Thakur. And this purity is very important for devotees also. For us as practicing devotees, purity is very important. Srila Prabhupada, he was so, he gave so much importance to purity. He even said, purity is the force. One of the 5 wonderful statements of Prabhupada, books are the basis, purity is the force. He emphasizes on purity so much so that in his preface to Ishopanishad or NY, one of these two, I'm not wrong, he says he wants all the devotees to be spotless. The devotees of Krishna conscious movement should be spotless. That should be how he wanted his followers to be, like that. Be pure and spotless. And why cannot we be spotless? It's not that Prabhupada is saying spotless is very difficult to be spotless. How can we be spotless? After all, we are the material, we are the conditioned souls who have the 4 defects, and we are covered with so much anarthas, and it's so difficult to purify the mind. How can we ever be spotless? It is possible. We have the spotless Purana with us. Amala Puran, Bhagavatam is there for us. Prabhupada has given us Amala Puran. He has given us the crest jewel of all the literature, Srimad Bhagavatam, which describes so easily, so practically the process of devotion. We have Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu. He is also spotless. He is a spotless moon of Mayapur. Actually, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is appearing, when Gauranga Mahaprabhu is taking birth, it is described why the moon hid himself, why the moon went into lunar. It's a full moon day, but it was a lunar eclipse. The moon went into an eclipse. And why was it? Because the moon was feeling ashamed that I'm having so much spots. So when the spotless moon has appeared, what is the need for me to be there? So he's going into eclipse. He's hiding himself. Akalanka Chand, Akalanka. There is no Kalanka on the body of the Lord. So Gauranga Mahaprabhu is the spotless moon of Mayapur, the spotless moon who is spreading his rays all over the world. So we have all these things as spotless, which have all come just to teach us, and we are getting this holy name, the process which is the most easiest and most wonderful process. So why can't we be spotless? We should strive to be spotless and please Srila Prabhupada by being pure, being spotless, and perform pure devotional service. We should perform. We should not perform mixed devotional service, not the devotional service teached with the three modes. We should perform pure devotional service without any ulterior motives. Strive to perform that. And we have such spotless examples. Haridas Thakur, we have Parikshit Maharaj. We have so many exemplary devotees, who have, by their behavior, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Chaitanya Bhagavata is filled with such Vaishnava Acharyas who are completely spotless in their behavior, in their sadhana, in their prachar, in everything. So when we have persons to look up to, we have books which teach us this process, and we have the most merciful incarnation always willing to give his hand to us, shower his mercy on us. We have so many Vaishnavas around us. Then why can't we be spotless? We should, strive to be spotless devotees of Prabhupada, which he wanted. And Prabhupada, this is Prabhupada's personal instruction to us directly in the preface. He says, want the people of Krishna consciousness movement to be spotless. And it's very important that, because another aspect of spotlessness is that one very common example is when you have a white dhoti and you have one spot of black dot in it, it immediately attracts attention, whereas a black cloth with a black spot doesn't attract attention. So as devotees, another thing is we are representing Srila Prabhupada, and therefore we are representing ISKCON. So we should be spotless so that people, just like when they see Haridas Thakur, they feel reverence to that person. They don't know what is he chanting. They're atheists, they're offenders. But when they see this pure person, because of his spotless nature, they are having reverence. That is a very important lesson that we should take from Haridas Thakur. Text 32. Kibashe Adbhuta Ange Shri Pulakavali Brahma Shivo Dekhiye Hoyen Kutuhali. Even Brahma and Shiva were satisfied to see the wonderful manifestation of Haridasa's hair standing on end. Kutuhali. Kutuhal is even a Tamil word. Many people will know. Kutuhalam, we say it. So Kutuhali means they are very, very happy. It's a very jubilant moment. Kutuhalama, we are very happy. So Brahma and Shiva, by seeing Haridas Thakur's manifestation of ecstasy, they are so happy. So the demigods, all the demigods are happy when they see a person becoming a good devotee, because after all, they are also servants of the Lord, and they feel very happy. And therefore, imagine Brahma and Shiva are happy, which means all the demigods are happy. These are the crest jewel among demigods, Brahma and Shiva, the leaders. So when they are happy, naturally all the demigods are happy, and when they are happy, they will naturally try to help us in our Krishna consciousness. This is the beautiful quality of bhakti. It pleases everyone. When Haridas Thakur was displaying his ecstatic symptoms, from the offending atheists up to Lord Brahma and Shiva, all of them were having different degrees of happiness. The offenders were astonished, and they were having reverence towards him. Naturally, the pious Brahmins would have been even more happy. The Vaishnavas were even more happy. The demigods were even more happy. And the Supreme Lord is ultimately the most happy person when he sees that the soul is, the conditioned soul has come up, removed all the bondages, and he is practicing pure devotion. So everyone in the three worlds is happy when a person takes up to pure devotion. In all other phases, if a person advances, there is some envy somewhere. When a person materially advances in any field, naturally in that field there will be competitors, there will be rivalries, and there will be envy. But in the spiritual field, when one performs pure devotion, there is no envy at all. The whole three worlds, from the most sinful person to the most great demigod, they are all happy unto the spiritual world. So that is a wonderful quality of bhakti. And here Haridas Thakur is, by Haridas Thakur's example, by reading Haridas Thakur's glories, we can understand all these things. So these are all wonderful acharyas, Haridas Thakur, Advaita Acharya, Gauranga Mahaprabhu. They have all taught us they're setting examples and teaching us how easy bhakti is and how practically we can follow it. So that comes up, come to the end of my section, which was allotted today, 15 to text 15 to text 32 of chapter 16 of the Adi Khanda of Sri Caitanya Bhagavat. Shri Vrindavan Das Thakur ki jai, Shri Haridas Thakur ki jai, Anantapati Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So, thank you so much for allowing me to, by your mercy, I could also glorify Haridas Thakur today on this auspicious day of Ekadashi. In fact, Ekadashi is also related to Haridas Thakur. We remember that wonderful pastime in Chaitanya Charitamrita when Haridas Thakur got the prasadam on an Ekadashi day. And he said that I can't honor prasadam, but prasadam is supposed to be honored the moment you get it. So he spent the whole day glorifying prasadam, which is also a way of honoring prasadam, and the next day he had it. On this auspicious Ekadashi day, I'm so happy to have the fortune of glorifying Haridas Thakur from Sri Caitanya Bhagavat, which is written by Vrindavan Das Thakur. So repeatedly, I thank you all from the core of my heart for giving me this wonderful chance. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Thank you. Actually, it was very, very nice to hear from you. You're a very nice speaker. You covered all the verses with so much love and such nice detail. So we are very grateful to you for coming on the call and giving us your association at the last minute. Thanks, Varita Mataji. Very nicely covered, Mataji. I really love everything that you said. Your realizations are also very spot on. Thank you so much for this very wonderful association.
Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Antaranga Tulasi, Devi Dasi. Thank you very
Hare
much.
Krishna, Mataji.
Thank you very much. It was so wonderful. It was so deep and very detailed. Thank you very much. Very much. It was. And thank you for your wonderful association. You are as good as always. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances. Antaranga Tulasi Mataji. Thank you for a very beautiful lecturing class. You explained us the importance of having sadhu sangha and how we should be happy to see a Vaishnava, because it's so rare to have a true Vaishnava's association. We should be welcoming and very happy, as it is an aparadha as well. Receive a Vaishnava properly. You also explained how we should relish the Harinam when we're doing chanting. Thank you so much for your beautiful association and very, very nectarian class, Mataji. We look forward to having you on this forum again. Dear devotees, if you have any questions or realizations, please go ahead at this time.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Please go ahead, Mataji.
Go ahead. I just wanted to thank her for a very nice, beautiful class. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji.
Indu Mataji, go ahead, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Antaranga Tulasi Mataji. Dandat Pranam. It is such a wonderful honor to actually see and hear from you today. Very, very detailed class. I really loved how you went through all the 15 chapters before, and you gave us, a synopsis of each one of them, a quick summary, but very beautifully explained, Mataji. I love how you went into, the Caitanya Bhagavat, and you always quoted references from the Caitanya Charitamrita, Nectar of Devotion. It's so beautiful, Mataji. Wonderful class. Thank you so much for your association, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for your association too.
Hare Krishna, Antaranga Tulasi Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Mataji, for such a beautiful class. Thank you for agreeing for the class and coming on the call on this very auspicious day of Ekadasi and hearing from you. It makes us very happy, Mataji. Thank you so much for such a sweet class. And a very nice summary of all the chapters. Who is listening for the first time, they can have the glimpse of whole Caitanya Bhagavat, whatever we saw before. Thank you so much, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Maji. You're always merciful on me, giving me wonderful sections to study on.
Hare Krishna, HG Antaranga Tulasi Mataji, Koti Koti Dandavat Pranam. So sincerely, Mataji, you take us in a Dham, Shridham, Mayapur Dham. And then Haridas Thakur story, Sisi Jagannath Das, Baba sit in a वो टोकरी में बैठ के वो प्लेस फाइंड करते हैं. All the Leelas, Mataji, especially Sloka, when we hear me and my daughter every day here, Jai Pataka Maharaj Vani, तो जो ब्रह्मचारी है जो श्लोका बोलते हैं एग्जैक्टली आप ऐसे ही बोलते थे और बीच में यू आर एक्सप्लेनिंग व्हाट इज द मूड ऑफ वैष्णवा दैट इज टच टू हार्ट माताजी टू सर्व वैष्णवा एंड टू सर्व some are able to preach, some are able to cooking, some are, Radharani is given a seva to each and every Vaishnava, preaching, cooking and book distribution. So inside and outside should be inner and outside. That is the touch to heart, that we should be clean from inside also. Nanima always told us that in village there is a vessels, copper ke vessels hote, so it's clean from inside, अंदर से ज्यादा clean करना पड़ता है outside से. So we have to clean ourselves from inside, then only all the qualities come outside. Hari Hari Gauranga Mataji, Koti Koti Dandavat Pranam. Please give your association and blessing to each and every Vaishnava. Hari Hari Gauranga HG Tulsi Mataji ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Mataji. I'll surely pray for everyone. And you also please keep me in your prayers.
Hare Krishna, Antaranga Mataji, really what to say, no words are adequate to express our feelings, and any verbosity fails in front of the genuine emotions. The depth of your swadhyaya and resources that you had gained, and how even for the beginners, in a very lucid way, profound philosophy, but you have put it in a very simple way so that within the power of our assimilation, we could really get it, the message. I mean, I never expected, first of all, as a language teacher, I can say the flow and your the way, choice of your words, how you drove home points, and with very effortless way, you could be able to, you could very nicely, you could deliver the course so nicely. And it is a philosophical thing, metaphysical thing, but within our grasp, it was there really. It was really, may God bless you, and may God's grace be ever with you. Really, we were really, it was a very wonderful experience for us. More, and we understood that that all the thoughts are flowing not from the mind, from the heart only. It is not just a byproduct of intellect or an outcome of intellect, but it is because of your sadhana, your continuous chanting, your in-depth scriptural knowledge and unfathomable love that you have for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and other profound devotees of Vaishnava culture, and above all, the upbringing of your adorable parents. All these things got reflected in your talk. May God bless you. So myself and Mataji, being our
Thank you so much.
we really give you our own blessings to all of you.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
May Lord Krishna's grace be ever on you. May God bless you. May God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna, Kodi Kodi Pranams, Antaranga Tulasi Devi Mataji. Really, I am very happy. I am very proud of you. Really, your parents, a very great soul. How I can tell, I don't know. But all the points, all the great Vaishnavas covered already. So now I want a simple and sweet. I wanted to express my today's your class. Really, Gopijanal Prabhu and Shama Gopika Mataji, a great hands up. That much today your flow Ganga, how come fast like that Pravak, Ganga Pravak, like that your class, your flow, body language. And then just now on Prabhu told you were simple and simple living, high thinking, like that simple points. You cover all the points. Namacharya, that name, Haridas Thakur Namacharya, and then Rasacharya, that one today only I know. Really, I am very, very happy to your association. I pray Praglad Narasimha for your good health and future, your Gragasa life. Thank you so much, very dear. Antaranga Tulsi Mataji.
Thank you so much.
Hari Bol. Hare Krishna. Prabhupada ki jai. Guru Maharaj ki jai. Hari Bol. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for giving opportunity hearing that Antaranga Tulsi Mataji class. Thank you so much. Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna Mataji, once again, I would like to thank you for your wonderful association today. And I seek your blessings and all the Vaishnavas' blessings on this forum. As this auspicious day of Ekadashi, today is my older daughter's birthday as well. Please bless her, Mataji, and all the Vaishnavas, that she takes up Krishna consciousness willingly, and walk, and preach and come to this Krishna
We'll all
consciousness.
pray for her, and we'll all chant the holy name for her. Her name, Mataji?
Nikita.
Okay, for the spiritual benefit of Nikita, let's all chant together. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Thank you so much, Mataji, for your blessings and all the Vaishnavas' blessings. I'm very indebted to you all. Once again, I would like to thank you so much for your wonderful association, and we'll look forward to having a beautiful association in the near future. Dear devotees, if there are no more questions or realizations at this time, I would like to pay my obeisances to Her Grace, Antaranga Tulsi Mataji, and all the assembled devotees. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhueva cha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananta Vaishnav ki jai. Srimacharya Das Thakur ji ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Sri Caitanya Bhagavata class ki jai. Her Grace Antaranga Tulsi Mataji ki jai.
Thank you, everyone.